Harvard time. That looks smarter.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's budget and millage adoption hearing. Today is September the 10th, 2019. It's 5:15, and I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to this public hearing. If you wish to speak during the hearing of citizens, I don't see many people in the audience. Please pick up a card in the back of the chamber, print your name and topic clearly, and return the card to our board assistant, Kathy Tompkins, sitting to my left. At the appropriate time, I will call you up to speak. Let's stand and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The 2019 proposed required local effort millage rate represents a 1.87% increase over last year's rolled back millage rate. The total 2019 proposed millage rate represents a 2.64% increase from last year's rollback millage rate. The operating millage is required to hire staff for the school district, pay negotiated salary and fringe benefits to the staff, the cost of fuel, electricity, and other goods and services. We'll now open a public hearing regarding the final 2019 millage rate. I do not have any cards. There are not any speakers. So I will now close the public hearing of the millage rate. Item number 3 is the adoption of the 2019 final millage rate.
I would move that the following millage rates be adopted as presented. Required local effort 3.695 mils, discretionary operating 0.748 mils, capital 1.5 mils, voted operating 1 mil, total millage 6.943 mils.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments? Mrs. Brown.
Clarification. We said that it was an increase from the rollback rate. What is the actual millage this year compared to last year? It was 7.00.
Some number higher than this year.
Last year's total millage rate was 7.003. This year's millage rate is 6.943, a reduction of 0.06.
Thank you.
Mr. Robinson.
She took the wind underneath from my sail.
The wind underneath your wings?
Wings. The wind underneath my wings. I was also going to point out the fact that although it's higher than the rollback, it's less than it was prior year.
Well, I'm glad I have that off my shoulders. My knees wouldn't have held up much longer.
A lot of food on this cruise.
Please vote.
All right.
Aye.
To do it. You're going to have to do
Oh, I
it.
have to do it manually. Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Zucker?
Aye.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The vote passes 5-0, and I'm happy about that. Next up, we have a public hearing regarding the 2019-2020 final budget. I have no cards for speakers, nor anyone that I see in the audience that would like to speak, so I will close out the hearing. Next, we have the adoption of the budget amendment for 2019-2020.
I would move that the budget amendments which amend the 2019-2020 fiscal year tentative budget be adopted as presented.
Second.
Comments? Please vote. Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Zucker?
Aye.
Mr. Robinson?
No, ma'am.
Mrs. Ziegler?
I should have put my thing to comment before we talked because I wanted to highlight it, but no.
And I vote yes. The motion carries 3-2. It passes. Item number 6, the adoption of the 2019-2020 final budget. May I have a motion, please?
I would move that the 2019-2020 fiscal year budget be adopted as presented.
Second.
Second it.
Third it.
Mr. Robinson?
Yeah, I just I saw that how we had got additional money in the fund reserve balance, and we have additional money in this budget. And I know I've been harping on two particular issues, and I just assumed because of the financial situation we were then that things may have changed to now. So I talked about the fact that garden funding got cut when it went from A to a C, and the fact that the Young Marines program at Venice Middle got cut. Are they still cut in this budget as they were in discussion prior?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
Mrs. Brown?
If I remember correctly, when those items were brought up, it was discussed that the reason that Garden lost that position was they were no longer a Title I school, and because of the rules regarding the Title I funding, we couldn't give them that position if we were funding it for the other schools out of the Title I funds. We could not fund it out of Title I, and if we funded them out of general revenue, Title I funds would not have allowed us to pay for it at the other schools. I thought that was made clear.
That's clear.
It is clear. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Mrs. Zucker?
I'd like to address the Young Marines program. It's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Bowden, that there was a gentleman there who was hired with extra credentials, and then when he was no longer there, we hired another person in his place who didn't have the same credentials. Thus, he was paid at a lower salary. That would be the same thing as if we hired staff, and staff retired, and we went and made sure that every staff we hired was at the same level as the previous ones, which I don't believe that's something that we do.
So the driving factor between the change in funding for the Young Marines program at Venice Middle School really lies in the fact that there is no such thing as JROTC at middle schools. JROTC is a high school level program. When we offer JROTC at the high school, we receive assistance in paying those salaries from the U.S. Department of Defense. And so they are compensated according to their rank when they left military service. At the Young Marines program, we had an individual there that we were compensating as if it were a federally funded JROTC program. When he left the program, we put them on the teacher scale. And so the change in the way the unit is funding is not evident at the school site. They still have the same number of positions. It's just they are being compensated on the district's teacher salary schedule because there is no participation from the U.S. Department of Defense.
Thank you.
Mr. Robinson?
And so Ms. Zucker said that it was based upon different qualifications. Somebody could have more qualifications and still get paid less because of the different salary schedule, correct?
Yes.
That is correct.
Okay, so that's not the reason why. And the issue about Garden to me, it's not about Title I. It's not even about homeschool liaison anymore. It's about a school that goes from an A to a C. And I think that when schools drop like that, we should look to reevaluate and prioritize in our budget additional resources to help out those schools. I don't care if they were Title I last year. I don't care if they were Title I 10 years ago. If a school, like I know we're doing it for M.E. Booker, when a school needs help, we should allocate our resources to help those people. And that's all I'm saying.
Please vote. Mrs. Brown?
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. Zucker?
Aye.
Mr. Robinson?
No, ma'am.
Mrs. Ziegler?
No.
And I vote yes. That carries 3-2. The vote passes. That is the end of our adoption of our budget, millage, and proposal for next year. Our next monthly work session will be September the 17th at noon. Our next monthly school board meeting will be September the 17th at 3 o'clock. We're adjourned.
Not 8:30, no?
Yeah, that's what I told Kathy. I said 8:30. We have to be there at noon. What? All this time. What are we gonna do? No, I'm kidding.
Well, that went very